Cheers. Okay, let's move on. Hey, because the amount of money invested in doing business abroad has shrunk. It's shrunk by a third because of the pandemic. That's the finding of a new report by the UN's Conference on Trade and Development. It's known as UNCTAD, which says global foreign direct investment fell from $1.5 trillion in 2019 to $1 trillion in 2020. The fall in investment can often translate into fewer jobs being created, but there is also some uncertainty about just how soon things will improve as the global economy starts to recover. So, on that note, let's jump straight over to James Zahn, who's Director of Investment and Enterprise at UNCTAD. He's also the lead author of the report. James, my friend, a real pleasure having you with us. Let's start with this. Briefly paint a picture. Just how bad is it? And what exactly has been behind the falls?
Yeah, as you rightly point out, it's a drastic decline by 1/3, indeed, and all the major developed countries have suffered from such decline. For example, FDI flows to EU fell by 73% to just $1 billion last year. And for the United States, the decline was 40%, quite drastic. What is interesting is that flows to developing Asia were resilient, and there was a modest increase during the pandemic. What is worrisome is that inflows to developing countries like Africa and Latin America, there was drastic decline. And that decline, particularly in greenfield investment, that new investment that is key to industrialization prospects of those regions, they fell over 60%. So that is worrisome. Of course, we know that the pandemic has caused a kind of a triple shocks, supply, demand, and policies. All these have impact on investment flows to developing countries, in particular in those manufacturing sectors.
And James, can I ask you this though, just for the uninitiated following this at the moment around the world, what does that mean? What does less foreign investment mean for the people who live in those countries? Does it mean possibly less jobs, possibly lower living standards?
Absolutely. In fact, if we look at the composition of investment that the sectors that suffer from the decline of global FDI, the COVID-19 has caused a kind of collapse of investment flows to sectors relevant to sustainable development in developing countries. That relates to infrastructure, including utilities. International project finance announcements were also more than 60% lower than in value. The greenfield project value across food, agriculture, water, sanitation, health and education, they were all 1 or 2/3 lower than in 2019. That has the impact for developing countries and running the risk of undone the investment in sustainable development sectors over the recent years that was increased over the past 5 years, to say, and also since the adoption of the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
James, sorry to interrupt. Very briefly, how long is it going to get until we get back to pre-pandemic levels? And how much hope can we put into the whole vaccine rollout?
Yeah, I think it's hopeful that what we call it kind of cautious optimistic for 2021 and optimistic for 2022. And we believe that the global investment decline bottom out in 2021 with modest regain of the lost ground, for example, 10 to 15% this year. And then by the time of 2022, that foreign direct investment will gain the momentum and possibly approach the full recovery in 2022. And onwards will be on a trajectory of growth.
Okay. We're leaving it there, James, but we really appreciate your time. James Zahn from UNCTAD, thanks very much for joining us. Stay safe and well.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's move on. You're welcome.